Welcome to the John H. Ames reading series. This evening, Trish Murphy, stockbroker for Kirkpatrick, Peters, Smith, and Pulliam, will read poetry and fiction from her work in progress, Paradise Tossed, a Yuppie Creation Myth. Ms. Murphy earned an ABD in English from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln in 1984, and will earn her PhD in English in August of 1987. Trish writes a column, Money Talks with Trish, for Lifeline magazines and Contemporary Women newspaper. Ms. Murphy also was an English instructor at the University of Nebraska.
Can you people hear me? I have to stand here and speak into this microphone for the sake of the tape. I really thank you for coming out tonight, especially my friends, and I see a couple of my former students here from the university, so thanks for coming. I'd like to read a statement, a little bit about myself and my writing. My first revelation that words could build an entirely new world was handed to me from my German grandmother, Lottie, in the form of Rotkäppchen, that's Little Red Riding Hood, and her encounter with a monstrous wolf. Grandmother told me that story countless times, and always in a mixture of her native tongue and English. But even as a 4-year-old, I understood every word because I knew that my grandmother loved me. To her, I am thankful for an understanding and an awe of that inner life of imagination which only words can bring to reality. Later, I became a storyteller in what was a family of storytellers, and I entertained my siblings at home and my classmates at school with the adventures of Anne and Bob. I won't go into Anne and Bob's adventures right now, but they entertained lots of people when I was 5, 6, and 7 years old. I wrote school plays that were produced for school assemblies. So successful was I with my writing, such pleasure and satisfaction did it give me, that I majored in it for my BA and my MA, which included a creative thesis, a novel, and also my PhD. I am a formal candidate for the PhD in creative writing. And the representative portfolio that I'll be reading from tonight comes from the book, Paradise Tossed, a Yuppie Creation Myth, which has, roughly about 5 to 7 stories and 21 to 26 poems now. The book's title is satirical. Much of the poetry is also satirical, although the stories are serious. The message is forthright. The hippies in the late 1960s and the early 1970s for a time were able to get back to the garden, in the words of a famous popular song from the period. But from the innocence of the garden, the hippies fell away. And as a group, they have grown increasingly materialistic and have evolved into the modern-day yuppies. The theme of the book is the hippies' indelicate fall from their primordial innocence and their tragic creation of darkness. In almost archetypal voices, the characters speak of their gradual dissolution. But there is a note of hope because these movements run in cycles, and the yuppies are taking from the hippie movement many positive things, the holistic health styles. That's being introduced into the corporate level of business. And hippieism may come back again. So some of that is in the book also. My aim in writing is to recreate in words the images and feelings that do seem to overwhelm me at times. Indirectly, I see my art as a kind of gadfly on the backside of the American social consciousness. I'm not saying conscience, I'm saying consciousness. If the reader of my works can laugh or cry or find hope in my visions, if his or her vision grows clearer, then I will have achieved my aim. I have to stand here, and I usually like to move around. So, now some of this poetry is serious. I'd say all of it's serious, but some of it's funny. And I understand that this is being videotaped for classes. I would say that this is not for grade school classes. I would say it's not for junior high classes. So if a principal is looking at this tape now, and the principal is from a high school, I think it would be appropriate for some high school English classes. There are some four-letter words that are in the poetry that are used for emphasis of certain kinds of feelings that are appropriate to the poetry alone, which I may or may not include tonight, depending on how brave I get. I certainly don't want to insult anybody in the viewing audience, and so if you are a junior high student or a grade school student, you shouldn't be watching this. The name of this poem is It's Got Sidney Carton Eyes. Sidney Carton, as you may remember, is a character from The Tale of Great Cities. The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It's got Sidney Carton eyes. This takes place in Lincoln. Today, when a rush hour red light at 10th and O stopped 4 lines of cars, bumper to bumper, sautéing in 95-degree heat. Today, an Angus steer, primed for Stu Anderson's restaurants in Marlborough Country, shipped on my new 1987 red Japanese turbocharged. Laid a pie through aluminum gate, stuck its rear end through the truck wall, and plop, plop, plop. While I'm beating time to Rod Stewart's infatuation, my head shoots through the sunroof. You jackass steer! Pushed body to body, a head with sorrowing eyes rests on a defecating rump. It is a far, far better, it moans, Sidney Carton eyes. And I with my head through the roof, I who cried, free Huey, free Angela, make love, not war, raised organic composted vegetables, boycott lettuce and green seedless with Cesar Chavez. I smell the stench of Omaha stockyards, the stench of the trains to Dachau, the frying flesh at Hiroshima, bawling, beating, moaning. In the back seat, freshly slaughtered prime rib from Ideal Grocery, wrapped in surgical white, is dripping red into the crisp smile of the happy face of the brown paper bag. $7.98 a pound for Dachau and cow-pied steak. I should have stuck with garbanzos. I'll never eat ribeye or Big Macs or barbecues on Sundays. I, a single yuppie who has a no nukes on my bumper, who jogs 2 miles a day and does Nautilus, I, who wanted utopia and communes to change the world, but settled for a flexible interest on a $75,000 condo, have just been shit on by a steer with Sidney Carton eyes. I'll never be clean again. Paradise Tossed. This next poem is a primordial innocence poem, which is at the first of the book. And this is a poem almost about a premortal existence, that kind of innocence. Something that happened, perhaps, before time began. Firefly will call me sister. Sit me down softly in a sliver of moon, and I will twine shooting stars through your blonde hair. Bury me burning in deep, restless sand, and I'll resurrect you with bright morning sun. One windless midnight in some sleeping field, we'll bathe ourselves silver with golden-rod sky. Gathering moments like wild chokecherries, curled up in the wind, we'll forget that there will ever be time, or rocking horses, or well-tended rows of cabbages. Rainbow will know your name. Firefly will call me sister, sister. You can ride me all night long, and then howl us home on the tongue of the great blue norther. Run till we're never tomorrow, and laugh while we shout no to the darkness. There's a theme all the way through this book of darkness and light. You're probably familiar with the Dismal River. A couple of these poems have to do with this primordial innocence. One of them is called Wakan. The Sioux called it Wakan and worshipped its passage, their bodies molded to movement, accepting the seasons of all things, leaving their dead stilted up to wind and scan. Against the sweep of eternity, our Puritan dead, behind their staked fences and close-cropped acreages, portion out life in parcels and paid up mortgages and ledgered lines. Tight minds, a futile ploy against the rush of time, the sweep of prairie. And this bleak shell, surviving the womb of some Irish immigrant past, trembles in the season from then to then, shatters, embraces movement, and moves on. While those with squinting souls, whimpering in the void, these flush behind and in the shimmer of passage, dim to darkness. Hi. This one's called Ophelia, and it's about an outing that some friends and I took to the Dismal River, a canoe trip. I love the rivers in Nebraska. If any of you haven't canoed the rivers, do so. I think I've canoed all of them. I've even gone over a waterfall, and one of them turned over. That wasn't planned. The dismal speaks in me. My blood begins to brook to the sibilance of her dark, sandy secrets. I have been sediment awash in some backwater. How can I have ever lived that other way, compartmentalized, schedulized, stratified, fossilized in layers? Her water works on me, chastens me in eddies, with parched lips on my belly like Joshua's legions. I drink in who I am. And all my drowned flowers rise to the surface at my crying for a vision. What I need is resurrection, to come forth shining a lady of the lake, with all my tomorrows and yesterdays like one glistening fish, free flipping in my hand. Why is it then that I give myself up willingly to the cramped corner of a car, carrying me back to a prescribed tomorrow, all paths leading back to Babylon, unmoving, dead, stagnant, long ago decided, while my currents race quiet as the slip of the river, screaming revolution beneath my sandy surface, on my glassy surface. Now that we have got past this hippie innocence and talk a little bit about the yuppies and what's happened, I wrote some of these poems quite a little time ago, but just recently I clipped two things from the newspaper, one from the Lincoln Star last week. Because they have no kids, dinks can afford to buy mink. It's about yuppies now, they're dinks, they're dual income, no kids. I guess that's me at this moment. So this is a little poem that some people think is serious, and I think it's kind of funny. But it has to do with the connection of the Native American influence on my writing and my love for the Native American people, and also my materialistic leanings. I like fur coats. Why I bought a coyote coat. When I was alone one midnight, my body yearning for paradise, coyote healers came to me in vision. They crawled out of the Black Prairie, down 48th Street past the Kmart and the all-night Denny. Even the fuzz sipping coffee and Frosties at Wendy's didn't see them. Slinking, sliding, their shining eyes telling of centuries past before Mr. Businessman and his snakeskin boots built the wilderness out of the garden. They climbed in my condo window and howled like Mick Jagger around my waterbed. Free our brothers' spirits, free our brothers, locked into a full-length coyote coat, hanging in the mirrored showroom at Hovland Swanson's liquidation sale. Free our brothers and sisters. And so I did. This next one is a takeoff on a famous song by Janis Joplin. And it's called Mercedes Man. And some of these poems, while they may sound personal, are really about a whole generation of people, and I see some of them sitting in the audience, my contemporaries. And it's about a universal experience, I think, for many of us. Some people may recognize parts of themselves in some of these poems and may be able to identify, and some of them will, some of you will not. And but they do speak about some things that have been happening to the generation that grew up in the 50s and 60s and the 70s and the 80s, still growing up. This is called Mercedes Man, with kind acknowledgement to Janice, who saw. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Man? I'm tired of whoring. I must make amends. Please make him wealthy and handsome and tanned. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Man? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a white wedding dress? There's surely some man, Lord, to whom I'll say yes. My ads in the singles, my future's a mess. So Lord, won't you buy me a white wedding dress? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a lovely baby? I should be a mother, that's what I should be. I'll gladly change diapers and I won't charge a fee. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a lovely baby? Oh Lord, won't you buy me some time by the sea? I've worked so hard, Lord, now I just want to be. When I was a hippie, my time was so free. Oh Lord, won't you buy me some time by the sea? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Man? We'll live by the ocean and we'll play in the sand. We'll raise a garden and we'll go back to the land. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Man? This next poem is called Valley Yups. And I wrote this poem some time ago too. And then in the Wall Street Journal, which I do read every day, being a good stockbroker. This article was last week. Children search for values leading to shopping malls. The malls are only too happy to satisfy teenagers' wants, particularly when parents are inclined to wave control. My parents say I'm lucky to have this mall, says 12-year-old Robbie Powers as he relaxes on a bench reading a book of cartoons called Garfield Sits Around the House. The fresh-faced teens pictured in Crestwood's mall courtyards are members of the mall's Student Advisory Board, says the mall owner. The youth, some of whom are models, help other teens to feel it's their mall, he explains. We encourage a sense of proprietorship. It makes for loyalty. No wonder Mike Redmond, 14, says, success is money mostly. I want to get the money first, and then I'll go for the happiness. So I don't think that this poem is too far off, but actually this poem is not about kids, it's about their parents. It's called Valley Yups. Eternity lies rotting in Valley View Mall, where witches sell darkness in all the bright stalls. Buy red gowns, computers, and soothing cold creams. Charge your TVs and your Valium. Just buy up your dreams. Become like a god for a song and a dime. Just trade us your vision, your hunger, your time. And the shoppers cry, give back our youth with your magical creams. Restore our innocence with your opiate dreams. And the witches, so wonderful in bright orange and scarlet, say, cash or credit, just worship the harlot. The guillotine stamps on the paper and card and steals away money for which they worked hard. There is no tomorrow on Buy It Now Street. The pain arrives later with payments to meet. So they hurry along at a terrible pace with poppy smell, heavy, sanctifying the place. And the witches, like poppies, abound in the mall. Opiate flowers to redeem from the fall. An innocence promise to them who have traded their freedom away. Now their dreams are all jaded. think I'll save these last three poems to the end. And there are quite a few more poems, but I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from short stories. I'm not going to go past 8:15. This story is called Shout No to the Darkness. And it is about a stockbroker who's married to an English teacher. Since I've been both, I know the experience. Sally and Robert live in Lincoln, Nebraska, down by the First Presbyterian Church on 17th and F, in a house that is no longer there. I go by that place and there's a ghost house there. I can still see it. It's no longer there. Robert goes downtown every day to the brokerage office, but there's some strange things that have been happening, and you don't know the first 20 pages of the story what's happening, but there's something dreadfully wrong happening. People are leaving Lincoln by the hundreds. Sally's mother comes by and says, "You've just got to go with me to Hattiesburg. You can't stay here. You know what's going to happen." The next door neighbor invites them to come to a prayer meeting at the church. People are going into the ground and hiding in caves, doing all kinds of things. But Sally and Robert are going on a picnic. And they've been planning this picnic for a long time. They've got the menu down pat. They've got tapes with their favorite music. They've got some family heirlooms, and they're taking them with them on this picnic. This is the end of the story. And they're heading north on 14th Street, and they're going out past Superior, out 14th Street. A lovely way to go if you ever want to watch thunderstorms. Just go out that road and turn off on a dirt road, and this is what they do in the story. There were still cars coming into town as Sally and Robert drove out on 14th, up past the up past the hall on the campus, Andrews Hall, where Sally had taught for the past 6 years, and on across the railroad tracks where no clanging cars had passed for weeks. The sun was shining, but it was quiet. Some houses were overgrown with weeds. Some yards had just been mowed. But the only sign of life they noticed was a group of people in a yard near Superior Street. They slowed down to read the sign they held. "Avoid disaster now. Join us in our storm cave." Some other stragglers not willing to give up the ancestral prairie, they thought. Robert honked his horn, and Sally waved. The horn played the Nebraska fight song, and a big lab, a black one, barked up the street following them. "Well, this is it, Sal. This is the end of it all. We're not committing suicide, are we? We're sure of that, aren't we?" When they broke past the last main road, the streets were completely empty. The sides of the road were overgrown with weeds, tall weeds, but in the north, in the distance, Sally caught the first sign of the darkness. And even above the car's engine, she could hear the increasing roar, like freight trains, a sky of freight trains bearing down on the little village of Lincoln that had always been an intruder on the grasses of the plains. In August, when she listened to the songs of crickets and caught sight of raccoons and opossums and rabbits in her yard downtown, she knew even then that it wouldn't take old Mother Prairie that long to reclaim her land. I hope we're not too late, Robert. We won't be. Robert, please, let's not spoil it by asking if we still want to back out. Well, I guess that's past, Sally. We're going ahead with this. I think it's the best way. I agree. They turned left up a spur road where they had often gone to watch the Pleiades meteor showers in an August sky. They would picnic on the hood of their car. They would listen to Fanfare for the Common Man. The tape recorder on the radio played all right for a while, but as the dark line in the north grew larger and ate up more of the black sky, the oppression grew, and finally the tape deck would no longer play. They heard a car spurting into starting and stopping, and looked. Up 14th, not more than 50 yards away, an old Chevy van drew up. A tumblerful of kids all ages scrambled out and ran into the grass, playing chase. A man and a woman got out and yelled, "Howdy," but kept their distance. "Well, I'll be," Sally said. "Other picnickers. Can't be alone anywhere." The Chevy van man rolled out a portable barbecue, and his companion pulled out a green Coleman cooler from the back. In a while, smells of cooking meat weaseled its way over. "Now, why didn't I think of that?" Robert said. "Mind if I go talk to him?" Sally didn't want him to, but his very nonchalance was a kind of appropriate behavior that stifled panic. She growled back with mock humor, "See if you can wrangle us a couple of hamburgers." As he walked toward the van, two yellow-haired kids were out in the prairie before her, like two shocks of grain, their hair rising in the wind, the warm wind that blew steadily now from the north with a smell on it that she seemed faintly to remember but couldn't place. She felt light. The sky was blacker than any black that she could ever remember seeing. It was a cloud, like a giant tornado, without any anvil-shaped thunderhead above, and it twisted in a great circle that stretched from horizon to horizon. She stood now on the hood of the BMW with her dress flapping about her knees. She forgot about the wax job. She forgot everything but the people and the clouds. Robert was pointing up to the north to the man and his wife. Sally could see the two little yellow-haired kids. They were running in and out of the weeds, and they waved to her and pointed up to the black cloud. The noise and the heat were increasing, and Sally grabbed her binoculars. And when she looked through the lenses into the relentless approaching night, she thought that she had never seen anything more beautiful, more powerful. It was impossible to grasp it, to take it in. She thought of those huddled in cellars or churches or racing time on the interstates to get away. What they were missing. She looked again, and it was closer. And then she realized that it was too close and too powerful. She realized the price of admission to this show. She needed her ally, her old friends, the words to greet the stranger that was eating up her beloved prairie, not more than 10 miles away, as she saw Robert with his arms loaded with paper plates and hamburgers headed back to her. She wasn't ready for it all to be over. She didn't know how to meet this darkness. It wasn't panic that grasped her, but something much stronger, something that would last. It would not go away. It wasn't right that it should be ending while there were children playing in the grass, while there were golden-haired prairie children to run in the grass. It wasn't right. The two cars basked now in the line between light and dark. The couple called their children to the van in the gathering twilight, and Robert sat on the bumper of the car. Sally got up, and she raised her fist. Only she could hear the word in the dark, dank darkness of the gathering roar. "No," she shouted. "No," she shouted to the darkness. This next story is a journal entry, not my journal entry, but there are a few stories that really did happen in this story. I had some friends who went to Vietnam, came back, and were never the same. Some of them have made great contributions to their society. But this story is really about an idealistic young couple. And the husband was in the free speech movement at Berkeley. He's a little bit different. He decided to go to Vietnam. He wanted to, and he was very brave about it. He decided that he wanted to take a stand for something. He wasn't going to be against something. This is a journal entry of the wife he left behind. And she lives in Lincoln. He left her in Lincoln when he went to Vietnam. And this is the 20th of October, 1971. And she has a habit of taking walks in Pioneer Park. And this is a Sunday morning. The story goes into a Sunday morning of a walk she took in Pioneer Park. And part of the story actually happened to me. I took a walk in Pioneer Park with a friend, and I met this character. The Pioneer Park Prophet is the man that I'm talking about. The name of the story is The Ballad of the Green Berets Widow. Oh, I can pull this thing up. Don't have to lean over anymore. Great. The Pioneer Park Prophet was sitting in one of the back booths of the 27th Street Burger King today.
He was sitting with a girl in a satin zip-up jacket. He didn't recognize me, and I had to laugh at the dark side of things, how they keep popping up and reminding us that we're not going to be left alone in this life to have any peace. It was the first time I had laughed since Tom's death. Davy only ate half of his Whopper. I didn't eat anything. I just had some Sprite. I call him the Pioneer Park Prophet because that's where I met him and saw him. Jay and I were on one of our Sunday morning walks. At the beginning, anyway, it was a glorious morning, and I had every hope that Tom would come home, probably a hero. He'd only been gone 3 weeks. I was coming to terms with my fears and putting everything into God's hands, and the trees were like coffers of Alexander's treasuries that yesterday, or treasures of King Tut's tomb. At autumn and golden, and Jay is talking to me about a book he's planning to write. And I'm feeling the goodness of the cold October air and the slope of the walk and the still green fields, and then we both hear it. The song was a rhythm at first, dear reader, so that I sensed it, wondering what it was, a kind of moaning or chanting. And then we saw him up ahead of us, marching in the middle of the road, going toward the animal section, the Black Prophet. Jay called him that later when we became concerned about the man, whether he had any special powers or not. Levi's, a long dark cloak, a staff, and a dark blue bandana wrapped in the style of someone who lays cement. He was grinning and singing as if he cared not a whit that anyone heard him. Surely the empty park and the golden morning couldn't be embarrassed for him. I wasn't. And Jay, while he obeyed his proprieties, liked the daring of eccentricity. Oh, what would I do without my wonderful friend Jay, dear reader? The chanting prophet couldn't tune, just meet some kind of rhythm that seemed to be already in the air that morning. And this was what he sang. On this day, bells on the horse's brow, singing holiness unto the Lord. Well, what transpires then is an interchange among these 3 people. I'll read the last 2 pages of the story. This woman's friend Jay has been talking to the prophet about his views about many different things. He's quite an interesting character. Then the prophet seemed for a moment in the power of something other than his own search for power. Missy, is here your husband? Jay looked suddenly taken aback. Jay's her good friend. He had been the one who had allowed the animal prophet to engage him in conversation. Now this man was addressing me. You got one? This is the way the man talked. Yes. He waited, but I said nothing. I didn't want to talk about Tom right now. He dead, Missy? A chill hit me. November. No. Don't ever mention Tom and the word death together. He's been gone 3 weeks. He's coming back. Not you. You have no right, I thought. You goon. It's my Tom and my October morning. Jay seemed waking out of his fascination and sensed my chagrin and warmed to his sense of protectiveness and chivalry. But he went too far. Instead of just ushering us on, he contrived with him. Her husband is fighting in Vietnam. How dare you, I thought. How dare both of you talk about Tom? Well, Missy, you know how in the Bible Christ separated the sheep from the goats? I didn't answer. Jay, let's go. I'm going to go back. A pronghorn bounded just out of view. The close of the prairie's rim that had seemed so friendly retained its feeling of home, but the park that had been my refuge had a stay on it now, and I was mad at myself for giving this stranger any credence at all, just because he had talked about my husband and death in the same sentence. What power did he have? None. But the words, he dead, Missy, that had been interpreted by Jay as a question, rang inside me as if a message from the darkness. He did, Missy. No question, a statement, a revelation. Jay, I want to go eat breakfast. And I shook myself. I wouldn't let it get to me. I was bigger than my own fears. Tom had shown me that. Don't be superstitious, he used to say. Well, Missy, you a sheep, and your husband, he a sheep. But this man here, he a goat. Jay looked like he had been shot. He, to himself. And we walked away back toward the lake, where there were geese lighting and taking off. I laughed. I started laughing and couldn't bring myself to stop. Prophet? He's no prophet. I'm not a goat, am I? Of course not, Jay. Of all people, certainly you are not a goat. You're one of the kindest men I've ever known, one of the gentlest. But the morning was ruined. And in the background, we heard the animal prophet hymning again to the buffalo and the fleeting pronghorn. On this day, bells on the horse's brow. 2 days later, an officer from the post visited me. He didn't know me, and he didn't know Tom. Tom had died in some kind of stupid accident over there. They say I'm taking it well, but I'm not, because I hate Tom for going, and I don't really give a damn about commitment. And I won't go to Pioneer Park ever again. My last recollection of that morning was Jay's great uneasiness. You don't suppose he really was a prophet, do you? And my reassuring Jay, no. And I don't really think he was. It's just that God is kind and prepares us for those things that may be too hard to bear in ways that we may not like. I guess this out-of-place hippie prophet who fancied himself some kind of benefit to mankind when he probably smoked too much marijuana was as good an angel of God's messenger as any. Why does there have to be any darkness? If only I hadn't seen that prophet yesterday in the Burger King, I didn't have to be reminded. What did Tom's death have to do with this black pimp? What right did any mention of my golden eternal man have to do with a man sitting in smoke with a red head and a satin jacket with hair roots that were black? At least he didn't see me. My back was turned. And I didn't finish the cheeseburger. Davy didn't want his anyway. I got him out of there. I thought of my Irish grandfather and the moving he used to do, he said, when he was a kid, to the other side of the street because of witches. I didn't believe in such things. I just wanted some peace. They say I'm taking everything okay. I'm on Valium. Tom wouldn't have approved. Not disciplined, he would say. Don't ever do drugs, he said. But I'm mad at Tom. He shouldn't have gone. We were going to do wonderful things together. He tried to control, and life had the last say-so. Davy's watching cartoons this morning. I hear the television. I don't like him to watch all that violence. He's not supposed to have it on. I've got to close now, dear reader, but I just wanted to tell you what happened this morning. Routine is good for me. I get up early and use my slant board, and I run. And Davy's good for me, too. I have someone to care for, and he gets me up early, so I'm not letting myself go or anything like that. This morning I thought I heard the front door about 5 a.m. I turned over, thinking momentarily it was Gloria. But then a draft hit me that didn't go away. I came to my senses and realized that she had flown out of Omaha 3 days before. Davy? He wasn't in his room. I looked out onto the front yard, a woven patchwork of crushed autumn pumpkin and squash vines, the remnants of Tom's June planting. There. 3-year-old David in his pajamas, heading for the road. I laughed softly and caught him up in my arms. Davy, I said, sweeping him into my arms. He must have stumbled and fallen in his trek because his pajamas were low-slung on his tiny hips and his forehead was streaked with dirt. I wiped off the dirt, like a mother animal licking away after birth from young. What are you doing out here, Pumpkin? He didn't look at me. He looked straight out to the road, pushing my arms aside. And in his father's voice he said, I'm going to meet the sun. I'd like to close with 3 poems. And I will finish by 8:20. This is a song. It's called Shell, a sea song, P-S-A-L-M. The boy in this is supposed to be a man, but it's spelled B-U-O-Y. And the refrain is, You boy, singing your sea song, braving the beach alone, listening to the conch of broken cries, wash that sea green weeping from your eyes. Join us in our Sunday Armageddons. Ferret out the darling dollar from its lair. We can teach you sweet palaver. We can promise you promotion. Give up your sea song. Turn your back on the ocean. Let us sell you the ocean in a curio shop shell. Guests will marvel at its howl to the tale it tells. It's a purchased trophy, a profit proof of lured prey. Join us on the misted rocks and own one just like it one day. Stroll on away from the savage surf, part or laugh at our shell of scattered sighs. Listen closely to soft moaning of the taken from the shattered waves of faith and the shores of dream denied. You boy, praying your sea song, braving the beach alone, listening to the conch of broken cries, wash that sea green weeping from your eyes. These next two will appear toward the end of the book. This one's called Elegy for a Small Planet. I know what I'll do when the bomb drops at 2 and the earth dwells in darkness once more. While others are fleeing, I'll spend my time seeing the pansies grow round my front door. I'll wind the hall clock, play Chopin and Bach, watch sunlight dance on the oak floor. And when the clock strikes its knell, I'll have played the songs well that will never be heard anymore. And lest we end on a sad note, I'll just read you a little piece of endowment. This is the last poem, and it's not completed. I've changed part of it, so I will. The book starts kind of in a premortal existence, and it ends going out in kind of a continuation of eternity, going out into eternity. I guess I sometimes sort of forget that destiny doesn't lie in Earth's sunbreaks. Mother Earth may claim me, but she's stardust, same as you, same as I, same as us. And when we've gone back to ashes, the you of you and the I of I will be traveling on, journeying on, out there. And on a star-bursting night like this, Spur 27 meets the Milky Way, somewhere I can't quite touch yet. And you and I, we're still reaching for that mooring, throwing our anchors with seeing hearts into that mystery sea, casting off, singing the stars. Remember them to me, won't you, when I'm broken with the night? Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your coming out. Do any of you have any questions? No questions? I wanted to show you something. I forgot to wear it during the talk. I was supposed to read it when I read my hippie poems. This is a hippie jacket. I won't show you everything, the hippie jacket, but it was made by a friend of mine who was in Vietnam, and when he came back, he needed to do something to calm himself down, and so he took up embroidery. And he was an Aries. Here's the Aries over here. But he wrote on the bottom, "So what?" And I added a President Truman button. Thanks for coming.